In this video, we're going to talk about Testim for Salesforce, our most recently released product. But before we begin, let's make a few assumptions. You've created an account or you signed up for a free trial with Testim for Salesforce. You've logged in, maybe you've created some tests. We're going to assume that you've done that. There's some things we're probably going to gloss over. If there's things that aren't clear, we have a ton of other YouTube videos, so go look at our channel for something that you may need more clarification on or more details. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So really at a high level, what is Testim for Salesforce? And you might ask, how does it differ from the regular Testim? Great question. Testim for Salesforce has all of the functionality that Testim has in the normal Testim product offering. In addition, we've created some predefined built-in functions that can help with both faster authoring and testing of Salesforce specific applications. So at a high level, this is what we're kind of handling behind the scenes, dynamic attributes. So really our ability to auto map and filter out dynamic classes, being able to handle dynamic pages, shadow DOM, customization, and integrations, which we'll be touching on here in a minute in the demo, both using Apex code or JavaScript code to validate values or perform other types of validations or functions that are more complex. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into the product. So if you've logged into Testim, you know that this is our visual editor. This is where you're going to go to edit or create tests in Testim. So if you click on this plus here, you notice that, well, before I even get into that, let me point out, on the left-hand side, this blue bar indicates that Testim for Salesforce is enabled. So if you've created a trial and you don't have Testim for Salesforce, reach out to your sales rep or go to our website and we can enable this feature for you so you can validate and test your Salesforce applications. I should also point out that you don't necessarily need Testim for Salesforce to test Salesforce applications. We just added some predefined functions that make it just a little bit easier. So if you hover over this plus button here and we click on test and predefined steps, you notice there's an option here for Salesforce. And there's two options. One is an auto login option and one is an Apex option. So for the auto login, we actually can pass in, these are the required fields. We pass in our Salesforce URL, our username, and our password. And here's where we're going to go ahead and pass in our key. This allows us to get through the multi-factor authentication with Salesforce. There's some more details in this step here. This is our auto login step, and there's some details about how you would go about setting up MFA for Salesforce. So go ahead and follow these instructions if you need some clarification on that. Another thing to point out here is under test data, this is where I passed in a bunch of test data. So we actually can upload a file, we could browse to a CSV, it's going to convert it to this JSON format, which allows us to do more data-driven testing, which is something that's very common when you're testing Salesforce applications. So what this is going to do, it's actually going to handle the entire login for me. So let's go ahead and run this. And you can see here again the required fields were username, password, and this MFA key that's a one-time generated key. And it should go ahead and log us in. And we can see there that it's actually now logged us into Salesforce. And instead of having to worry about coding a login for Salesforce, which can be rather complex, this dramatically increases your ability to author and quickly create other tests. Now I can come in here and essentially click on whatever I want and start creating my Salesforce test. Okay, so that's one example I wanted to show you. Let me go ahead and log out of the application here. The other scenario that comes up quite a bit when we are working with customers was if you're working with Salesforce and maybe you are a administrator and you need to test a particular flow or you set a trigger setup and you want to validate something, it can be complex and it can take a lot of time to do that. And there's not really a great way to validate that within the context of the Salesforce GUI application itself. So one of the other options we have, and I'll just go to again down here, we also have the option to do what we call an Apex action. So essentially what this allows us to do is run Apex code in the Salesforce environment as well. So in this example here, again, we're going to pass in the URL, the username, and the password, and we're going to pass in a Salesforce token. Check for the documentation on how to create that token. But again, the power of test-driven data, this test data here, I have all of this information in here, okay? So you can, again, you can take a CSV file and upload it, and it's going to convert this to a JSON format, and it's got my token and the opportunity in here and all of the data that I'm going to use in my test. So in this example, what we're going to do, we're actually going to create an opportunity in Salesforce, and in our sandbox, we're going to create an opportunity and we're going to mark it as closed won, and then we're going to go into the GUI and validate that that opportunity was created, that we move the opportunity to closed won. Then we're going to delete the opportunity because cleaning up is also very important, and then we're going to go ahead and log out of the application. So you can see here I have a lot of shared groups. Here's where I'm validating the opportunity. I have another group where I'm actually deleting the opportunity, which is also very important to make sure you're cleaning up from a best practices standpoint, and then we're going to go ahead and log out of the application. So let's go ahead and run this. And just to show you the actual Apex step itself, this is where we're actually creating the opportunity in Apex, so we can actually run any type of Apex code we want. This would be analogous to essentially logging into the Salesforce developer console and running it within the context of the console. So really great ability to run code here and then be able to do a validation and see what's happening. So we can see here in the next step, we're actually going to go in and we're going to validate the opportunity. So we're going to go ahead and click on opportunities, and we're going to validate that we see that particular object that we created, and we can see that's our brand new opportunity in there. And we're going to go in and actually verify we see the text close won in there. But there's a ton of different validations that you could actually do. That's just one of them, so just keep that in mind. And now we're going to go through and clean up our opportunity. We're going to delete it. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and log out. So hopefully that provided a nice overview of Testim for Salesforce. Go out to our website or go to app.testim.io to get more information or to get started.